There's a misnomer when we go to cloud, and you need the expertise of people who are knowledgeable so that they don't have these follies or false starts. The assumption is that the cloud providers provide a complete stack of services out of the box. I registered for my Google Cloud or my Azure Cloud or whatever, and they provide me all my security services. I don't have to do anything. When the reality is, that's just the base, and you really have to start layering on the other services. Their assumption is Google took care of it or Microsoft took care of it, so I'm safe, I'm now good. And that's where I find many of the false starts just happening, because now I've updated uploaded my critical data to the cloud, but it's really exposed. It's in that S3 bucket that's a problem, or it's in that particular Google Drive that I forgot to put the right kind of controls on, or the online SharePoint
what are
site.
The governance
and all of a sudden you're going, wait a minute, my data's in the cloud, it's exposed, but I have no means of protecting it. So that, I think, is a key factor to communicate to any organization, and it goes back to understanding what your journey to the cloud is going to be. How do you achieve your mission securely and ensure that you've got the right priorities to make sure that you've created that room, that house, with all the right protections around it? Then I'm going to move my assets into it and move it forward.
It goes back to ensuring and enabling, right? Because
Absolutely.
I think as collectively we can all agree that we need to ensure, first and foremost, that our customers, organizations are educated well enough to understand where they are in the journey, what the end goal is, right? As you, Krishna, pointed out very well, because
very
it is
true.
about connecting the dots, right? And as someone once said, it's not about connecting the dots forward. You can never connect them forward. They only connect backwards. You just have to believe and know how they will connect in the future.
You brought a key point, Tatiana. One is like when all these things, journeys are happening, right? How capable your workforce or your team are able to address to a thing. Are you training them enough? Are you coaching them at regular intervals, right? It's not like you go for training 1 year and then
and then pandemic happens and everything is changed.
So how do you keep your team very well aware of what to react, how to react? Panic is not the right action, but I think how you're able to assimilate it and then react in a more appropriate way. That's why Control Gap and the other team members, or Radware, can help them to get that everything into a single plane, and then educating your workforce to how to operate on the scenario. And then something unfortunate happens, how are you able to?
Yeah, that incident response is critical, right? Is having the right plan around that. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you kind of touched on two things. And Adam, I remember you kind of mentioned that a hybrid might be transitional. And I don't think it probably will be. I started my career, 20 plus years ago at IBM, and I thought mainframe would be dead by now. And it's clearly not. There's still a ton of it. And it's not going anywhere, right? So when we kind of think about all the challenges with security, and we think about the challenges culturally with adapting to new providers, some that people aren't familiar with in an enterprise space, it's really interesting. How do we drive all the right information and the insights? Krishna and I, our cloud platforms now do an incredible job of exposing huge amounts of data about what's going on in a cloud, but how do you govern that? How do you wrap that into a single pane of glass? And how do you culturally change and teach an organization to deal with a massive amount of now insight into what their environment is doing? If you can't kind of adapt to that cultural shift, you're going to have challenges. Adam, do you deal with that a lot?
We do, and one of the things that you touched on, Neil, is that technical debt, which it's the infrastructure evolution that, from this vantage point, if you're connecting the dots backwards, Tatiana, is really referred to as technical debt. Is that mainframe? It's that legacy system of record. It's that database that just won't go away, right? And one of the things that we see customers struggle with is really internal culture, right? I mean, many large enterprises and institutions have basically found themselves at the brink of cloud, but they're very siloed. Mm-hmm. And those silos really need to come down. And Krishna, you touched on it as well, is about skills development and that evergreen knowledge process. Because to your point, Neil, the clouds are changing. You guys are evolving. I mean, even the digital foundation that providers like Equinix provide, right, is
shifting.
It is shifting.
And I mean, go even more foundational. Look at the changes that came about through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. One of the toughest things for us through the pandemic, right, and this goes to culture, was
putting in processes to protect our staff. So nothing against all of you guys around the table, but I care more about the guys working here than I care about any of you guys. So one of the things we did at this point, when the pandemic started, is we locked down our facilities. And for our customers, it was a major cultural shift, not being able to go hug their servers, hug their equipment, hug their infrastructure, and do stuff, Adam included, right? Oncore included. One of the things we did was we said, look, we've got guys on site. We'll do the work for you. Tell us what you need, right? We'll go plug cables and do whatever you need. We'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. But that alone was a huge culture shift. Right?
And
That must have
I'll
been painful
add to
for
that,
some.
Assange, is that it's because of a convenience factor that most IT teams have. I could just walk up and do something.
Yes.
I don't have to worry about it. But now I've got to instruct someone else, which means now I have to have the right kind of change control. I have to have the right approvals to do that, because there's a risk factor for you taking that cable and pulling it out versus
Yes.
me taking that cable
You
and
have
pulling
to
it
plan
out.
And it gets
and prepare.
more,
Right.
and this
And how do I
gets-
back it out? So those
Yeah.
are fundamental cultural shifts in many organizations, that a convenience factor that IT teams have had, that I could just take care of it or do what I need to do. Now there's a level of separation, and there's anxiety
bang
that's
on.
associated
But
with
here's
it,
the crazy thing, right? As you talk about culture shifts and moving to the cloud, that exists, except now there is no infrastructure. You don't have access to it, right? You have nothing, and you've got all these tools that the cloud providers have built, like Microsoft and Google are tooled out the wazoo. But how do you utilize those tools? How do you take that multiple streams of information in, decipher it into something usable so that your staff, your IT, your tech staff, right? And in these cases, I use that term loosely because it's mostly DevOps. It's not even a tech staff.
Exactly.
They have to distill that.
How do you
information
distill that, and
somewhere.
how do you use it? And I mean, I'm going to throw it to like Adam and Gilad. Like, how you guys are on the forefront of this? Like, how are you helping
Well, so
these organizations?
So I'll pick that up, Sanj, and yes, the disruption in the last 18 months. I mean, we definitely felt it. I mean, we definitely picked the right partner ecosystem to partner with, because it was completely transparent. The interaction with Smart Hands, the interaction with the facility to help us scale our customers. I mean, we have witnessed a demand from our customers, more bandwidth, more services, more cloud, and that put a strain on our supply chain, which we overcome with our partnerships and Equinix helping facilitate a lot of the equipment coming in, standing it up, helping us along the way, scaling our infrastructure footprint. But what made us realize at that point is partnering with the right organizations is key in this entire journey. Because the business of the future, or really the business of now that's becoming the future, isn't necessarily a stack that a company owns. It's becoming a workflow, right? So the magic that an organization brings to its customers, its product, its service, its capability, is really stitched together. It's a workflow, it's a process that's stitched together of cloud services, service providers, facilities, connectivity partners, security frameworks, and they're basically stitching that all together, wrapping it around a brand, and delivering that as a secure, compliant experience downstream to its customers.
It's
Well
not
said.
even a
Well said.
static workflow. I think that's what's
dynamic.
really
It's
interesting,
a
is that it's dynamic.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I now have plenty of clients, and I'm positive Krishna does as well, that will instantiate applications or environments on my cloud one day, rapidly reconfigure their interconnect, and either burst for capacity or operate in another cloud another day, or hybridize their backup, their DR, the concept of business continuity across multiple clouds. And so those workflows have to be able to handle that, right? That composable element and that dynamicism, and the tooling on top of it, right? Has to be able to extend and expand and realize that I'm not protecting a set of racks inside Equinix. I'm protecting a series of assets that
Yes.
move around from your location to a
Bingo.
different one.
Whether
or
it's
between
physical,
us.
whether it's digital, whether it's something we're calling multi-cloud hyper-threading, right?
Yeah. So
You and the
need to.
technical terms. It's killing me.
It's the only way to describe it, right? Think of availability and running an application on both of the clouds at the same time.
yeah, exactly.
And how do you now
Enabling it.
Yeah, that-
enable that?
How do you enable that?
That's true. From our perspective, we're thinking about security, but then also delivering a very friendly and simple experience to our customers. So we're focusing on this holistic service, holistic approach to deliver everything under a single pane of glass. It's easier to think about this as a 3-layer model. Well, the first layer will be ensuring the security posture of the cloud, where we actually look at stuff like compliance violation, you mentioned before, public exposed assets, and misconfigurations in the cloud. So the next level will be cloud entitlement infrastructure management. That's basically how you harden your environment by removing excessive permissions. So we can help our customers to identify these excessive permissions and remove them. And by that, applying the principle of least privileges. So after ensuring the cloud posture management and the permission hardening, the next level will be cloud threat detection and response. Monitor the cloud continuously, looking for anomalies and suspicious behaviors in real time, but also correlating them together into one storyline. So basically, at the other end, we can deliver a full story with the context, so the end user will see, the entire storyline of this event, not just single alerts.
Nobody should
Music to my ears.
underestimate that, by the way. Like the ability to find an anomalous event
Yes.
in an environment where you can spin up 100 servers, and that might be the intended behavior by automation, or noticing that somebody has spun up 100 instances of something for Bitcoin mining is totally different. It's complicated.
Completely. The environment is so huge and so dynamic these days. It's like impossible to find these anomalies when you're doing a manual process. So this is exactly what we do for our customers. So delivering these 3 layers I described ensure a secure experience for the customer in the cloud. And I think Adam can tell more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Gilad. So what we see is many organizations that are, starting their journey, they open up permissions. They basically open them up, start lighting up resources, trying different things. And where we find ourselves helping those companies and those customers is locking everything down. And really, the minute that we start locking things down, that's where friction happens.
Typically, right after their first build?
Right after their first build, exactly. So we defer to partnerships with Radware to help identify those excessive permissions and really understand, are they needed? Track them, if they're truly needed, we need privileged access management, right? So this is where frameworks, where the cloud providers, the cybersecurity governance frameworks and continuous compliance posture monitoring becomes key and important.
One factor, Adam, that I've found, it's been our experience, especially when we're going along this journey, and I think you touched on it as well, Gilad, and I think you did as well, Sanj, is that the visibility of what's going on your network and understanding the interconnectivity, understanding the anomalous factors that happen, it's amazing to see the eye-opening experience the customer has. Because they've gone from, although they're monitoring, it's kind of in the dark. IT kind of does it. They're in the corner, they do their thing. They'll let us know if something happens. Hey, Outlook's down, what's going on? The IT team's on it, or our third-party vendors taking care of it. But no one really understands that. But when you take a centralized single pane of glass and say, hey, it's not just Outlook, here's what's happening, here's the interconnections, here's where the breakdown happens, here's the evidence that goes along with it, the eye-opening experience that a customer has to say, I had no idea we do these things. I had no idea that could happen. I didn't even understand that was a threat that we could have. And it's an amazing experience. It's an epiphany at the executive level, never mind the IT level, because they now have a sense of security, that they can sleep at night knowing that the right team's on the job, that they can get the information quickly, and that it's digestible and distilled in a way that they can understand it. So being able to communicate at that executive level as well as at a technical level is paramount to being able to provide, in my opinion and in our experience, any environment, whether it's hybrid-based, whether it's cloud-based, or any combination. Being able to have that in a timely manner, to be able to respond and let the decision makers and stakeholders make those decisions in a timely manner is transformative as far as the industry is concerned.
But it's more than even that. So giving decision makers and stakeholders the ability to make a decision is one thing, but responding to a real world threat is a whole other thing. And I'm going to go back to what Neil brought up earlier. Composable infrastructure, that is where all of this is at. So imagine a world where now you can take the real-time feedback that Radware is providing, right, as to what's happening across your disparate, I'll call it disparate infrastructure. I can't even describe it, right?
It's everywhere.
Yeah, I'm kind of reticent to use the word meta, but I was going to say, but let's not.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Another
I get it.
technical term.
I get it. I get it. But it's across all of these disparate applications, that's really what it is that you have running out there. The ability to now correlate that and respond to it in the real world. That's key. Absolutely. Right? And more importantly now, and this is where I really view the power of the cloud, this is where it becomes kind of crazy, being able to catalog all that data and now starting to do a statistical trend. So for example, this now is the new edge. This is it.
Yeah.
So if I'm a resource and I'm looking at one particular application all the time with one subset of data, imagine a world where now I suddenly leave this on a table somewhere and walk off. It's unlocked. Somebody looks at it and they start looking at a different subset of data. That's where
And you touched on a very key point here. This is you're responding.
Yes.
You're not reacting.
You're responding.
You're responding based on actual imperative data as it correlates to your specific threat scenario. And I think this is really the power of the cloud, the power of the data collection, the power of the telemetry that is exposed, and also the interpretive nature of the Radware platform that basically helps unify that.
Connecting the dots
together,
backwards,
exactly.
Connecting the dots backward to what Krishna was saying earlier. And want to draw a key point that Adam pointed out just now, responding versus reacting. Because in the old world, reacting is cut it. It's done. You're down.
Pull the
responding, pull the cables. In the new world, the current world we all live in, responding is, hey, this is not right. Let me re-authenticate to make sure this person is who they say they are.
Let me correct the behavior.
Very different, two very different things, because the end user may be looking for something that they actually need, and you don't want to impede them. You want to just pop up a little thing saying, hey, I don't trust you. Re-authenticate. Prove who you are.
Any tool can do network monitoring.
Yes.
Any tool can do application monitoring. Getting to the point of having network intelligence and application security intelligence is the huge leap that you have to be in this game.
And identity platforms play a huge role in this.
So I just want to take a different, I wouldn't say a totally different paradigm, I just want to take a different viewpoint on this. Security is a shared responsibility across everybody. If you're a developer building an application, you should keep your keys in a key vault or a secure key store. That's a fundamental fabric of your engineering, right?
Secure development
practices, that's day one, right? So if you don't have that at a core level, what end up happening is you cannot fix on the end state. The second one is when you're building a server, RDP and SSH port should be shut down by default. But sometimes you misconfiguration, you might miss it. That's why you guys come, hey, you have a misconfiguration, and listening to telemetry and building new compliance policy. I think security it's a paradigm which is shared responsibility, tools and technology help. And I also want to touch one other point on when you have multi-cloud, how are you going to implement policies across all the cloud, and how are you going to educate because each individual or in the enterprise have their own viewpoint on security, but you have to take the message to what is relevant to them. For a developer, these are the practices. If you're an administrator, these are the practices. If you're a CTO and CIO, you have different messaging has been in different places, but I think security is a joint responsibility. Tools like Radware is going to give them the right information and educate them, right?
Exactly.
Teaching is key.
Education.
Yep.
I think that you touched this point where everybody is looking at different insights, but it's all security. Just one thing for the developer, second thing for the DevOps, the third thing for the CIO. This is exactly how we leverage our community of customers. So we have cross-community insights. So for instance, if we find an interesting observation or finding in one customer, we immediately looking for the same thing across our user base. So we are now smarter. We know what to look, once we find this interesting item. So this is exactly how we leverage our community of users, working together with our partners to apply these security patches in real time and deliver a more secure experience.
And I think to your point and what Neil mentioned earlier, it's a key piece of the intelligence. You've now learned something new. You're immediately applying it to understand what is the impact to the current customer base or the current subscribership that's out there to say, hey, we found something here, it may be affecting you. And if you could all remember, go back 5 years ago, how was that done? It was an email that was sent out to a distribution list, usually to the sales team or to an executive going, hey, we found this thing, you may want to talk to your IT team about it. And if, depending on the time of day, he would forward it to the manager, who would forward it to the supervisor, who would forward it to the IT guy, who would look at it and go, yeah, I just read about it on the news and I've already applied the patch, right? Now it's real time, it's being taken care of, and that allows the security team to sleep at night knowing it's being taken care of, right? It's the executives feel more comfortable that their cloud is safe, because one of the paramount issues with anyone in the cloud is it's out there. There's this nebulous cloud that I don't understand, but is it secure? Do I have the right kind of ratchet, the armor around it that someone isn't going to penetrate it in the multi-cloud environment or otherwise, right? So go ahead, Adam.
No, and that's a great point, Robert. I mean, traditionally you can think of the applications that we're enabling in the cloud now as traditionally being, pretend it's a safe. Your apps, your workloads, your data is all protected. Traditionally, 5 years ago, the safe was in your bedroom closet, right? Locked up, bolted to the wall. Now that safe is actually on your front porch. Not that your data is not secure, it's just everyone can poke at it because they know your safe is, well, they know you have a safe now. Right? So that's why it's important to have these continuous compliance and security monitoring apparatus that helps identify that, correlate it with telemetry, and provide actionable responses to those threats.
I don't know. You're scaring me with this safe on the front porch. I think Krishna and I's job is to make sure if it's on the front porch, it's surrounded by 2 moats, 5 alligators, and 9 fences.
So that's what the cloud provides.
But that safe is in the same place with 50 other safes around behind the moat and everything else, right?
So, but there is a counterpoint to all of this, right? And let's talk reality for a second. Zero-day exploits are in the wild everywhere. Every day, more and more. 0 hours, not even 0 day anymore. You're absolutely right, Neil. And where this becomes really interesting is when you now start to think about SIRT, or Security Incident Response Team, and how they're responding to these incidents. So say, touch wood, something happens and an external actor gets into key infrastructure they shouldn't be in. What's the standard response time? The ability to rebuild stuff on the fly. The ability to say, look, I take this entire environment, I don't trust it anymore. Go away. Let me rebuild. And where this becomes really interesting, and I'm going to throw back to Adam, because it's a cool story that we can weave, that kind of weaves in the Radware model in terms of detecting and being able to respond to things on how you rebuild from a secure adjacent enclave, right? And it's a very interesting thought process.
Thanks, Sanj. So Oncore specializes in cloud adjacency that delivers that secure enclave capability. So you can think of this as like a movie theater, right? Your secure enclave is that projector, and now you're reconstructing and reconstituting your digital environment, composable environment, regenerating your keys and your secrets, and you're projecting that workload through code at your clouds, cloud regions, cloud environments, however your digital estate is composed. So cloud adjacency delivers that secure single source of truth, and it also facilitates digital transformation through hybrid infrastructure that's in line with the overall cloud data path. Robert, what do you think?
I think those are really great points, Adam. And I think one of the key things to kind of sum up all of this, I think we've had some really great discussions around the transformation process, the inception, and even some of the key factors in building and starting that roadmap. But for those that are in a mature state, the ongoing compliance becomes the major factor. How do we operationalize compliance? How do we operationalize security? How do you create the right operational processes that change becomes part of your daily activity? How do you ingest that change and make it innocuous to the organization? It doesn't matter what change comes our way. We can absorb it, put it through our regular processes, and continue operating like nothing happened. From our perspective, one of the key things we work with organizations is not only to align to the proper frameworks, but look at those operational processes, how they affect the cloud, Where do they need to touch the cloud between third-party vendors who are responsible? How do we keep them in check? Through rigorous validation, whether that's through our own internal validation, the customer doing it, or the third parties. Having a proper partner that can actually provide those services and the insight that you need to be able to make those decisions. But ultimately, doing real-world testing. So back to the incident response. On a regular basis, are we looking at what are our real-world threats? Are we simulating them? And have we educated our people to understand that? So the people, process, and technology all need to meld together to be able to facilitate ongoing compliance into that digital transformation that we're talking about here today. Krishna, I know you had a couple of questions as well for Radware.
So one of the questions for Radware would be, hey, how do you reduce noise? Because on the cloud world, you can generate millions and trillions of events and telemetry. So, but the main idea is going to the source and going to the right information with reduced noise. I like to understand how do you guys are able to achieve that, and that's my question.
That's very true. I think that nowadays the focus has shifted from detection to detection and correlation. So you have many security services that can detect. But if you keep shooting alerts on the customer, that's like white noise. This is not actionable information. So we took this approach to reduce the noise and deliver more actionable recommendations by correlating events together. We're leveraging our deep machine learning capabilities to find anomalies in the environment. What we basically do, we are baselining all of the behavior of all of the entities in the cloud so we can understand what's normal and what's not normal for each one of these entities. So after finding these anomalies, these suspicious behaviors, our true magic is being able to correlate them together and orchestrate this storyline that can help you understand that what you see is part of the same attack against you, the same campaign. So basically, you have everything in front of you, all of the different steps in this attack, and what is the recommendations, how to mitigate that. So to summarize this, correlating together malicious events or suspicious behaviors is key in reducing the noise and delivering more actionable items to the end customer.
And nobody should underestimate the challenge in doing that. I remember, again, back in the day, creating a baseline of a static environment like Tripwire was like, okay, I just measured the environment and I had a static thing to always compare back to. Creating a baseline in a dynamic environment that is shifting all around is very non-trivial, and there's no way to do that outside of machine learning and deep learning capabilities. It's a fascinating approach.
It's akin to like the old world. Like I'm an old school ops guy. When you used to get those alerts on your Blackberries, I'm dating myself here, right?
Blimey, we're going back.
Blackberries, alerts. And
Did you have a pager? Because that was even older.
No. I didn't have the pager.
The SkyTel pages.
I didn't have a pager. Mine was the Blueberry that I accidentally whipped across the room.
were even more fun, weren't they?
But where you get an alert and you're like, okay, I don't need to respond to that, right? Correlation is key, because if I don't need to respond to it, why am I getting it?
Context is very important.
Context is huge. Right? False positives,
Being able to pull that together. Again, we're all the way back to the very beginning again with, composable natures, big envelopes that we have to kind of seam together into a single view of what we do next.
And you're right, Neil, you can't trivialize this because now, if you think about your digital estate spread out globally across multiple cloud providers and platforms, across multiple Equinix facilities, right?
Across multiple regions, right?
Across
around the world,
regions,
with different requirements.
But each of that instance of your workload, of the customer's workload, is now generating telemetry. That's a lot of data to manage. So without the without the innovation of ML and AI, your biggest challenge is going to be referencing that volume of data in a timely and coherent manner. Right.
And it has to all be transparent to the end user.
And correlated.
They can't see it. They don't need to know about it. There cannot be a performance hit. I can't have my system slowing down because I'm doing these security features. And that's a piece of the pie that many vendors are struggling with, is although the cloud provides the capability, the capacity to do it, it's a matter of how do we re-engineer our tooling to now be in line with the data transmission versus analyzing it, holding it up. It really has to be in that stack. As you mentioned, the OSI layer, you have to insert yourself in that stack somewhere to be able to do the work you need to do, but be completely transparent to the end user.
And it's about real-time response to those events, not a reaction.
And I think, we've talked a lot here about the complexity of like large scale and global events. I think what's really interesting is in cloud scale, it doesn't even have to be a global level event. Not all of my clients are global level. I operate largely here in Canada. I have tons of clients that are isolated, their entire infrastructure is just here. But even here, you have 2 regions, I've got 2 regions. Each of those 2 regions has multiple zones. Yep. You have multiple facilities. So even for a business that is actually just a national level and not worried about the global scale, everything we've been talking about just absolutely still applies.
Yeah, it does. And where that becomes very interesting is how do we respond to these national entities to give them what they need locally, the security, the warm hug that they need locally, if I, lack of a better description here, locally, while allowing them to build and grow their business. And
it's a pandemic. Huge. We're not hugging anymore.
Virtual hug, a meat hug.
Well, these are all very valid points, and I thank you for sharing all the insights with our customers, with our organizations. I think we're all going through this transformation together. I think the pandemic brought us all together, and I think it's suffice to say that the journey to the cloud, we are kind of all in this together with our customers, and individually so, right? And it's all about shared responsibility. And it kind of brings it back to where we started. And I think to summarize it, I would say that to enable is important, but you need to first know where you're going, right? So ensure, enable, protect, and then secure. All of those pillars have to be addressed for a successful journey. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And if I can say as a partner professional, this really represents value add, and I must thank Oncore in a big way for bringing together this team around the table to talk about this very important issue. And we really hope that the audience of this, one, learns that there are many facets that they have to grasp, but there are people to help them do that. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage those who are viewing this to reach out to their favorite partner, Oncore or otherwise in any part of Canada or the world, and say, you know what, we want to do this right. We don't want to make the same mistakes others have made. We want to accelerate this in a clear, concise, and productive way.
We'd like to thank our panelists for their insights today. There are many aspects to consider when embarking on a cloud transition journey. And with their insights, we were able to address many common questions. That said, it is important that you find a partner such as Oncore Cloud Services who can guide you through this process to make your cloud journey fast, easy, and most importantly, safe. On behalf of our panelists, Oncore Cloud Services, Equinix, and Radware, and of course my co-host Fred Patterson, we wish you a prosperous cloud journey. Good luck.